What is being done to the Palestinians now is horrendous.
Any anger from someone like, as Sarah Silverman or anyone calling, like, their focus, which I understand, focuses on, get these hostages out. Your anger should be directed towards the Israeli government that appears to not care at all about the lives of these hostages. Like, I put something on, my tweet about Sarah Silverman was replied to by Michael Rappaport, out of all people.
Oh, the actor? No way.
Yeah, but he just like posted a video of him, and his video is like, Hamas released the hostages. Is Hamas checking Twitter to check out Michael Rappaport and what he's saying? What kind of... If you have any influence at all as someone with like a platform, a celebrity, it should be used to put pressure on where you have some actual sway, possibly, like on your own government, on, try to a ceasefire, like use your power in a way that is you can would actually maybe impact in some way. Hamas ain't going to release the hostages because they saw Michael Rappaport on Twitter. So it's such a ridiculous, like, those people are so, I don't
Honestly,
know, they're in their own heads.
That's much more reasonable than Sarah Silverman being basically mad at Palestinians for not demanding that Hamas release the hostages so that way they can get their water turned back on. I mean, people's brains are so broken. And listen, to those who are like newer to politics, younger folks, it's always been this way. I want to share, there's a really good clip from 2007 where Jimmy Carter was on MSNBC. This was in the context of Hamas was just elected. And he published a book about Palestine. And what he said was really, really good. So let me share that, because I think that his words, I mean, it's still true. And he explains the situation in a very objective manner. So give me 1 second. I'll pull this up here.
And also emphasize the word not, that is peace and not apartheid. That's what I hope to accomplish with this book, is some move toward that goal. But there's no doubt that within the occupied territories, Palestinian land, that there is a horrendous example of apartheid. The occupation of Palestinian land, the confiscation of that land that doesn't belong to Israel, the building of settlements on it, the colonization of that land, and then the connection of those isolated but multiple settlements, more than 200 of them, with each other by highways on which Palestinians can't travel, and quite often where Palestinians cannot even cross. So the persecution of the Palestinians now under the occupied territories is under the occupation forces is one of the worst examples of human rights deprivation that I know. And I think
even worse though than a place like Rwanda.
Yes, I think yes. You mean now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think
the impression now of the Israelis, of the Palestinians by the Israelis, is worse than a situation in Africa like the oppression of Rwandans and the Civil War.
I'm not going back into ancient history about Rwanda, but right now, the persecution of the Palestinians is one of the worst examples of human rights abuse I know, because the Palestinians.
You're talking about right now. You're not talking about, say,
I'm not talking about ancient history. Ago. No.
Well, Rwanda wasn't ancient history. It was just a few years ago.
You can talk about Rwanda if you want to. I want to talk about Palestine. What is being done to the Palestinians now is horrendous in their own territory by the occupying powers, which is Israel. They've taken away all the basic human rights of the Palestinians, as was done in South Africa against the blacks. And I make it very plain in this book that the apartheid is not based on racism, as it was in South Africa, but it's based on the desire of a minority of Israelis to acquire land that belongs to the Palestinians and to retain that land, and then to exclude the Palestinians from their own property and subjugate them so that they can't arouse and demonstrate their disapproval of being robbed of their own property. That's what's happening in the West Bank. And the people in this country, in America, never know about this. They never discuss this. There's no debate about it. There's no criticism.
Yeah, so I showed that because, like, I don't know what the response was to that, but back in 2007, after Hamas was just elected, you can imagine the things that were said about, Jimmy Carter. Why is he talking about this? He's a terrorist sympathizer. It just, this conversation is the same.
They did say that about him, about other things. That's why he pretty much lost his reelection.
Mm-hmm. It's also worth mentioning there that was David Schuster. I hadn't seen that clip yet, so David Schuster popped up. That was like, oh my god, because he's been on Twitter and he's completely incoherent on this. It's like again, talk about somebody who otherwise, as from what I've seen, solid on other human rights abuses, other issues, but when it comes to this, just out of his goddamn mind.
That's why you don't
so-
have any don't have any heroes unless it's me. You could idolize.
Well, he was
me.
never a hero of mine. It's just
Your cancellation is going to be so dark.
but yeah, but God, Jimmy Carter, man,
I know what you're saying, though,
amazing.
David. You said at the start of the stream that things. Mike too. I guess everyone just how disillusioned and weird everything feels right now. You know, in ways it hasn't before. And I totally agree with you in that, like, sometimes you just feel everything is backwards, as in like you're just watching all this play out in real time. Maybe because we have more access to information or more AIs driving stuff. And there's that, but on the other end, like, so much of it is just disappointing. Like, I feel like we've learned nothing from the past whatsoever. You know, like, I mean, we're all old enough here that we lived, you know, we were old enough post 9/11 that we knew what the climate was like. We knew what life was like. We, you know, like, one of the people that I was doing one of my YouTube channels with, his name's Dave, you know, his family's sick. He was racially profiled all the time, like every other person who was you know, Sikh, Hindu, you know, in Canada and the US, trying to cross the border, random security checks, all that kind of stuff. It's all ramping up, you know, and that combined with, like, also, you know, rampant hypocritical anti-Semitism coming from the right wingers who are completely just being like, you know, we speak for, you know, all the Jewish people and shit like that. This is what, you know, Israel wants. They are one and the same, stuff like that. Like, it's just absolutely vile atmosphere now.
Yeah, it really it harkens back to the post 9/11 days. Like, I was very young. I was like 13 years old when it happened, but I remember seeing explicit racism just on local news. You know, Sikhs were targeted. Oh, these are Muslims. There was so much ignorance because, like, for a lot of ignorant Americans and probably Canadians too, and Brits, to be fair.
Oh yeah.
Like, they didn't even know that Muslims existed. They didn't even know about Arabs. So this was their first introduction. So that was justification to just demonize all of them. And so, like, it has taken so much time to break down these myths. I remember in 2006, as a unfortunately admitted Big Brother fan, when they brought on the first Muslim contestant, he was talking about how, you know, he was racially profiled and whatnot. And that was really controversial back at the time. It took years to break down these stereotypes, years to educate people. And I felt like we've come so far, and to just see, like, the whole thing crumble and people just right back to racism, right back to dehumanizing Palestinian people and Muslims. And then on top of that, you see the right really pouncing and trying to gin up anti-Semitism, trying to equate the Israeli government with all of Jewish people. It feels so hopeless because it's like we are a species that never learns our lesson. We just keep doing the same thing. History is cyclical. We keep making the same mistakes, demonizing people. And will we ever learn? And it just feels like the answer is no. And that's so disheartening to see.
I don't want to make it seem like all doom and gloom though. Like, I saw I got to bring it up, but there was a big
the protest,
protest, yeah,
right. Yeah,
huge
at
shout
out to Jewish Voices for Peace.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Organizing
Jewish
those
Voices for Peace.
massive protests.
They
were absolutely stunning, and like all the heroes who were willing to get arrested in the process. You know,
500
civil disobedience in action. That I was like the unbelievable bravery. Incredible bravery.
Yeah, this is great. That's more than I expected. When you look at public opinion polls on this, it is depressing. So don't do that. But to see that many people show up,
actually,
I just saw a
see
couple
that? Yeah.
share them.
ones
Share
that
them.
are
I
good.
need to see
There's a new
something.
one.
So Israel-Hamas conflict, what should U.S. do now? So, you know, some of these are predictable. Send humanitarian aid to Israel, 76%. 72% for use diplomacy with countries in region, which seems
That's a
pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, that's yes. 57% for send humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza, which is more than the 48% who say send weapons and supplies to Israel.
And keep it going though. It gets the questions get even. This is actually the least positive poll, and it's still pretty good. This one is really surprising.
So yeah, this is the breakdown. Should U.S. send weapons/supplies to Israel?
Wow.
Majority of Dems, 53% of Dems say they should not.
as well as
the U.S. should not. And 55% of independents said the U.S. should not send weapons and supplies to Israel. 57% of Republicans say they should, which is a majority of Republicans, but also 43% is still,
Yeah.
So is there more than this?
And there's another one. Yeah, there's another one.
That is encouraging, honestly.
Should
U.S. send humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza? Dems, 70% should. Independents, 59% should. Even 41% of Republicans want to send it.
This is actually maybe the most surprising.
Wow.
Wow.
That kind of makes my heart swell a little bit.
Yeah.
Sizes.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to realize that, the voices that are often are most prominent on social media are probably not the majority of people. They may have the majority of the power, but when it comes to how people actually feel about this, it's numbers like this are encouraging.
The fact is, the vast majority of people really, I mean, you can look at this as unfortunate or because it sort of is, but also just the facts. Vast majority of people are not paying attention to any of this. They just they just heard about the Hamas attack, so they feel bad for the Israeli people. And they're seeing these images of crying Palestinian children and bodies of dead Palestinians, and they feel bad for the Palestinian people. And they're basically saying we should help the Israeli people. Oh, we should help the Palestinian people, without any real, knowledge of or context of everything, really. And that's, I think, really what you see bearing out in that poll. That those polls pretty much are showing where people are getting their news, honestly. That's how I look at it. Like, if you're a Republican, you're probably getting your news from somewhere that's more sympathetic to the Israeli government than to the Palestinian people. But even then, I guess you can't get away from seeing those images of, Palestinian people dying. So 41% of the Republicans even say we should send support to the Palestinians.